The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
And good morning and happy Tuesday. I'm Alex Fisher. We begin this morning with a deadly hit and run overnight in Bakersfield. It was the second time it happened in the same day. The latest happened on Brundage Lane in East Bakersfield around 11 o'clock. Officers say they found a dead body in the middle of the road. Investigators say he was hit by a car while riding a bicycle. The driver of the car immediately took off. The investigation is still ongoing. And this comes less than 24 hours after another person was killed by a hit-and-run driver. A person was hit in North Bakersfield early yesterday morning. This is near Highway 99 and 7 Standard Road. CHP says the driver was about to get on the freeway when the person walked across the on-ramp and directly into the path of the driver's car. That person died. Officers say drugs and alcohol do not appear to be factors in this crash. The Bakersfield Fire Department putting out an explosive car fire. It happened over the weekend on Highway 178 at the Oswell off-ramp. Firefighters say the car appears to be abandoned. CHP officers ran the car's plates, and at that time it hadn't been reported stolen. As of now, it is unclear how the fire started. And another fire sent huge plumes of black smoke into the sky over central Bakersfield yesterday at Pacific Tire and Wheel at the corner of California and Chester Avenues. The fire started just around noon. It was knocked down quickly, but before scorching the exterior wall of the candy shop next door. No one was hurt, and the cause is still under investigation. In your 17 Court Watch, the teenager convicted of killing his girlfriend's mother last year was sentenced yesterday. 16-year-old Nikolai Thorne Roach, who was 15 at the time of the murder, admitted to all the charges filed against him in the death of Michelle Louise Taylor last month, who was found dead on July 7th in an Oildale home on Arthur Avenue. Roach admitted he and his girlfriend, Emily Evil Resnick, plotted the death of her mother for a month in advance, contradicting Resnick's claims that they killed her mother in self-defense. Because they were under 16, they could not face charges in adult court. Instead, Roach was given the maximum sentence, and he will be held in custody until he is 25. Resnick will be back in court later this month. With communities in the Central Valley still recovering from recent storms, there are new concerns about what will happen when the summer heat arrives. On Kern County In Depth this weekend, the Kern River Watermaster talked about the possibility that water from melting snowpack could overtake Highway 178, essentially cutting off the Kern River Valley and even wash into the city of Bakersfield. 17's Maddie Gannon has more.
After one of California's wettest winters left the Kern River's watershed at 422% of normal, Kern River Watermaster Mark Mulcahy on Kern County In Depth said officials are bracing for the worst.
Worst case scenario could be a warm spell where that water comes off very quickly out of the snowpack, greater than what we can manage safely. And then that water is going to find its own path down the channel. Mulcahy
said the Department of Water Resources predicts about 1.8 million acre-feet of water will come through the Isabella Lake this spring and summer, about 1.2 million acre-feet more than it holds, leaving the possibility a few hot days could result in water flowing into Bakersfield.
If debris gets hung up on bridges or weirs or anything like that up and down the river, we could have flooding out of this river channel very easily.
That is exactly why crews are at Coffee Road, preparing what they call the Kern River Canal Backup Weir, which Bakersfield Water Resources Director Daniel Maldonado says has capacity issues.
In order to accommodate and that capacity issue, we allowed Buena Vista to on-site to install those siphons to divert additional flows. You know, we went through this alternative management program with BV to install those siphons to keep flows going downstream, as well as preserving the ability to divert to other canals.
As for other potential low points in the city,
we have staff monitoring it on a daily basis up and down the river. And identifying any problem area. At this point, we're focusing on the Coffee Road Weir because that's our biggest capacity issue. The other weirs upstream of that can handle some additional flows.
Maddie Gannon, 17 News.
We have breaking news this morning as we learn Bakersfield Congressman and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is expected to meet with Taiwan's president tomorrow despite threats from China. McCarthy's office announced the speaker will host a bipartisan meeting at the Ronald Reagan Library tomorrow. The announcement did not mention which other members of Congress will attend the meeting. Taiwan is a self-governing island democracy that China claims as its own territory. Now, you may remember last week we told you Beijing objected to the meeting before it was confirmed, saying that it would be a provocation and warning that it would take resolute measures to protect Chinese sovereignty. Anticipation and a huge show of force growing right now outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, where in just a couple of hours, Donald Trump is expected to make history as the first former president to face criminal charges for his alleged role in hush money scheme and cover-up involving former adult film star Stormy Daniels just ahead of the 2016 election. Jay Gray is outside the courthouse in New York this morning with a breakdown of exactly what will happen during the historic proceedings.
Lower Manhattan on lockdown this morning. Streets blocked, an army of police and federal agents on the ground, and a warning from New York's mayor about anyone who plans to protest.
Our message is clear and simple. Control yourselves. New York City is our home, not a playground for your misplaced anger.
After arriving late yesterday, former President Trump expected to make the short drive from Trump Tower to the courthouse later today, where he will formally be placed under arrest. During processing, Mr. Trump will not be handcuffed. It's unclear if a mugshot will be taken. We do know he'll be fingerprinted. Next, he'll be escorted to a courtroom for arraignment, the first time someone who once sat in the Oval Office will stand before a judge to face criminal charges. Trump's legal team says he will plead not guilty to what sources indicate will be roughly 30 counts.
He's gearing up for a battle. This is something that obviously we believe is a political persecution.
The court appearance is only expected to last a few minutes, and former President Trump plans to leave New York, returning to Florida immediately after the proceedings. Jay Gray, NBC News, New York.
Now to an issue we cover extensively here on KGET, Kern's sober reality. And the California Highway Patrol has confirmed alcohol was a factor in an early morning crash that left one person dead and 3 others hurt. It happened on East Bell Terrace, just east of Bunting Drive in South Bakersfield, just before 2 a.m. CHP says the driver was going about 60 miles per hour when he went off the road and the vehicle rolled over. A woman died. 2 men and another woman had to be freed from the wreckage. CHP says only one person was wearing a seatbelt at the time of the crash. Investigators are asking for help in identifying 3 people accused of stealing thousands of dollars in items from a makeup store. The big theft took place in November. This is at a makeup store chain Ulta at the Marketplace Strip Mall. All 3 of these suspects are believed to be between 25 and 30 years old. Anyone with information regarding this case is asked to call police. The McFarland Police Department has been looking for a new leader for almost a year now, and one potential candidate was promoted to interim chief to hold down the fort for the time being. 17's Marco Torres reports.
The city of McFarland has a new interim police chief. As he's finishing up old projects, he's also bringing in new ideas to the table. Brian Knox is McFarland's new interim police chief, and he's no stranger to McFarland or to Kern.
Mr. Knox came over as a sergeant, and he has a pretty good skill set. Came with 30 years of experience with the Kern County Sheriff's Office, and so we decided to move forward in making him the interim chief. And since then, he's been doing an extremely good job. Knox has been working on finishing up old projects and is gearing up to start new ones, but it'll take some time.
Originally, when I came here, I understood that the police department was left with quite a bit of repair work to do, a lot of catching up.
Knox says McFarland is a high active gang area with confrontation spurring between other nearby cities like Delano, but he's working to push back against that. The department relaunched its cadet program for kids in school, and the department is looking to restart their Cop Pal program too. Another project being worked on by Knox and the city manager Kenny Williams is getting a new police department building for the city.
This is a what I would call a substation size department at this point, and the facilities here are very inadequate. We need at least 3 times the size of a department or physical department that we have at this point.
Yeah, certainly, obviously, library is still an option there, but that certainly is entirely up to the county. But we're not just looking at that. We're going to work with some legislators to see if there's a possibility of bringing in a police department / emergency operations center with the flooding that we had. I think they and we recognize the need for an emergency operations center. So if we can bundle those together, that may give us the ability to finance one or get one through a grant.
The McFarland police chief position still technically hasn't been filled and is still open as of this time. However, interim police chief Knox says he'll continue to serve the community to the best of his ability. Reporting from McFarland, Marco Torres, 17 News.
The Los Angeles Unified School District and members of the Workers Union have reached another step in their agreement after a multi-day strike last month. About 30,000 members of the union will cast ballots from now until Friday. The results of the vote, which is expected to pass, will be announced on Saturday. Both sides agreed to a 30% pay raise for the workers following a 3-day strike last month that shuttered LAUSD schools. The union represents the district's bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, and teachers' assistants. As gun violence continues to plague the nation, California Attorney General Rob Bonta says the state is taking action to ensure guns are kept away from people who are prohibited from owning them. Our Capitol correspondent Eitan Wallace reports.
Well, just take a look at all of these guns. These are just a handful of the more than 1,000 the Department of Justice has seized from Californians who the Attorney General says should never have had these weapons in the first place. Gun after gun after gun. These make up a tiny portion of the 1,437 firearms the state seized in 2022 from Californians prohibited from owning them. Among the items seized, 281,999 rounds of ammunition, 712 handguns, 360 rifles, 194 shotguns, 80 of what the state describes as assault rifles, and 54 ghost guns, as in unregistered guns that can be assembled at home.
Getting guns off our streets and out of the hands of dangerous individuals.
That's what Attorney General Rob Bonta says is the goal here, specifically the goal of California's Armed and Prohibited Persons System program, also known as APPS. It takes data of all the legal gun purchases and 3+ million legal gun owners in the state and cross-references it with a list of the more than 23,000 Californians who are prohibited from owning a gun, most of the time either because they were convicted of a violent felony or misdemeanor, were placed under a domestic violence or other type of restraining order, or because they experienced severe mental illness. If they're found with a gun or deemed to have bought one before they ended up on the list, the state will come and take it away.
It is illegal for them to have a gun. So for any legal gun owner who has their gun legally, who is not prohibited, who is following the laws of the state of California, this doesn't apply to you. And except for it keeps you safer, because it keeps guns out of the hands who shouldn't have it and allows responsible, law-abiding gun owners like you to continue to own them and possess them.
As for Republicans in the legislature, they acknowledge the state has ramped up investigations to confiscate guns from people banned from owning them. But Assembly Minority Leader James Gallagher points out the state still has a backlog of some 9,000 plus people who need to be investigated, saying, quote, nearly 9,300 prohibited gun owners waiting to be investigated is still far too many. Reducing the backlog of armed felons, domestic abusers, and the mentally ill should be the priority.
We're not taking our foot off the gas. While this report is a success story, there are still guns in the wrong hands. That means there's more work to do.
And Bonta says his team continues to go through the prohibited gun owner list every day, something he's hopeful will lead to more progress in the year to come. Reporting at the state capitol, Eitan Wallace, 17 News.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.